we have added the required elements and styled them as we want. Next, we need to implement the logic. That is, we want to add the selected value as a value of CSS filter property. So how we can do that? We can do it using jQuery or plain JavaScript. Here we are using jQuery. So let me add the script section after the style section. So after this, let me specify script and let me add the document.ready event as we are writing the code in jQuery. Document.ready function, open and close parenthesis, open and close curly braces, and here we need to write the code. So first we need to get the value selected by the user, right? These are the default values. So if the value is changed, we need to get those values. So on which event I can implement the logic? If the value of any of these input element is changed, I can implement the functionality. So we have only input elements of type range. So I can access the elements like $input. If there are different type elements, that is input text element, input password element, etc., then we can have a common class name for all input elements with type range and access using that class name. Here we have only range input elements, so I am accessing it using input type dot change. If any of the value is changed, what I need to do? I need to call the function. So let me specify the name of the function as add effect or add effects. Okay. Next, we need to write the function where we will collect the value of all these controls and apply it to the CSS filter property. So let me write function add effects, and we need to get the value of all these input elements, right? So we can get the values one by one. For blur, let me specify where blur value equals $blur, that is the ID of the element, .val. Like this, we can get the value of all the input elements. So the first one is blur, then the next one is contrast, then grayscale. So let me write where contrast value equals $contrast.val. Okay. Then where grayscale value equals, you can name the variables as you want. I am specifying value, then #grayscale.val. Okay. Then let us check the next three names. After that, invert is there, opacity is there. Okay, for opacity, I haven't changed the ID, opacity, and for also this Sepia. So invert, opacity, and Sepia. Where, invert value equals $invert.val. Then where opacity value equals, here it should be equals $opacity.val. And finally we have Sepia. So where Sepia value equals $Sepia.val. And finally what we need to do? We need to set these values for the CSS filter property, right? So how we can do that? I need to access the image. Its ID is image to edit, isn't it? Yes, it is image to edit .css. The property is to be specified like WebKit filter. Okay. And I need to specify the values like grayscale, then the value, then a space, then invert value, then a space, then invert in brackets the value, again a space, like that I need to specify. So let me specify in this order itself, that is blur in brackets. I need to end this bracket as the value is in a variable, then blur value, then again put a plus, then double quotes. It needs to be in px, that is for blur value we have specified 0 to 10, that is px. Then this bracket is closed. Then next what we need a space, then the contrast value. So contrast in brackets, again this needs to be closed, then here it should be opened, and in between we need to specify the contrast value. Okay, and the contrast value should be in percentage, so we need to have a percentage here. Okay, then after this brackets, then again a space, Next is grayscale. Okay. Then again a bracket. Then here close this and grayscale value. And grayscale also should be in percentage. So here we need to have the percentage. Then close the bracket. Again a space. Then we need to have invert, open brackets. Then here close this, and with a plus we need to have invert value. It also should be in percentage. So plus, and here percentage. Then after this again space. Next is opacity, brackets. Then here close this, plus opacity value. That also should be in percentage. Oh, here I need to put a plus. Actually, we are putting a number of plus values in between to concatenate string values with values in variables. Okay. Then opacity value, and finally we have Sepia, right? So Sepia, brackets. Then here close this, Sepia value. That also should be in percentage. So here percentage. Now we have completed. Now we can check whether we are getting the output as we expect. So what we have done here, for the image, we have added the filter property and added the effects one by one. Blur value needs to be in px. Then we need to have a space, then contrast, and its value, then it should be in percentage. Again space, grayscale, open the bracket, then the value, then it also should be in percentage. Like that we have added all the values. Now let me save this and refresh the page. Let me refresh. Let me try to add invert first. See, we are seeing the invert effect. Let me refresh and try to add the blur effect. See, the image is blurred. Then let me add the contrast. See, the image is having contrast effect. Then again refresh, grayscale. See, gray color is added to the image. Then opacity. See, it is becoming opaque, more opaque and transparent. Let me refresh, and finally Sepia. See, this is the effect we have added to Sepia. So these are the 6 effects we have added to our online image editor, and we can have different effects like this, whichever is allowed by CSS filter property. While adding, we have added these as input elements with type range, so that we can specify the minimum value, maximum value, and the current value. And we have changed the style by removing the bullet points, by list style type to be none, and also arrange them one next to the other. And we have 2 different sections. One is for image and one is for the controls. So this is how we can design a simple image editor to have different visual effects using CSS and implement the logic using jQuery.